It's always dangerous to meditate before you talk. There's just this feeling sometimes of just wanting to sit here and breathe, you know, not move into the space of words and thinking. However, it's part of our learning here. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you a little later about what you noticed this week about wholesome and unwholesome. What happened in your investigation of that, and whether you could feel the difference, really discern the difference. So discernment is so important. And I wanted to talk a little bit today just about something very relevant to the discerning of wholesome and unwholesome and finding integrity, which is the body. The body is a powerful tool for understanding and awakening. I wish I could remember the quotation from the Buddha, but there's a nice one about everything that you need to know is in this fathom-long body. You can discover, you can awaken just from what this fathom-long body will show you. So on our topic of integrity, I asked you in the meditation to just sort of feel how if you had a felt response to the word, and like, where does integrity show up in your body? I'm curious what people noticed. There's not really a right way to notice or a wrong way to notice. It's just the way you actually noticed it. For me, when I notice the feeling of integrity, it's the word core kind of comes to mind. I feel like I'm seated in the core of myself. I'm seated in my soul. I'm not sure if I know what the word soul means, but it's somehow using it captures something of really being that settledness that happens. One of the things that's so important about meditating, if you're wanting integrity, is that it brings you back to what's actually happening and what you're actually doing. And I might suggest that itself has a wholesome feeling tone. Just coming back to the knowing of what's happening right now. Particularly with respect to the mind. The mind is such a magician. It takes us on all of these long jaunts, and next thing we know, we're getting irritated at somebody, or preaching a little sermon to somebody in our head, or we're rehashing something that happened to us or something someone said to us. And so there's this sort of preoccupied loop which we often find ourselves in. It's kind of our default mode unless we've actually trained ourselves otherwise. This sort of rumination. So you might notice just that moment of kind of coming back to presence when the mind has wandered. There's a wholesome feeling tone there. It's like, reality, the immediate present. Yes. Or when you identify, say that you're feeling aversion of some sort. It could be aversion to your knee pain. It could be kind of the aversion to having to sit here. It could be aversion to my voice. To all the times I'm giving you instructions, some people feel aversion to someone telling them what to do. So they generate a certain amount of aversion just listening to one of these guided meditations. I think I've been there a number of times. It's not my general tendency, but I've been there, believe me, listening to someone guide a meditation, kind of going, oh, hey, please be quiet, or something like that. So these things happen, and yet there's a kind of feeling tone, a wholesome feeling tone that arises just in the noticing of it, provided you don't judge yourself for it. I mean, self-judgment kind of hurts. It has an unwholesome feeling tone. So if you notice that you're kind of feeling aversion to me guiding the meditation, and then the next thing after you notice it, you judge yourself saying, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be feeling aversion to Mark. Then you've just made something that doesn't feel good happen inside of you. Something that doesn't feel wholesome. There's not a feeling of like kind of right relationship to what's happening right there. And I say this with a little bit of trepidation, because what tends to happen with human beings, maybe especially Westerners, is as soon as you mention something like this, that aversion has a unwholesome feeling tone, immediately people go to shoulds. Oh, I shouldn't feel aversion. Aversion is bad, you know? There's this kind of labeling of a human experience as wrong or bad. The reason why it's unwholesome is that it's suffering. It's that simple. Feeling aversion doesn't feel good. It's suffering. So noticing it is actually a moment of not suffering. You might actually notice that when you notice your aversions, there's a little bit of distance from it. Doesn't grip you quite the same way. There's actually some easing that happens. So there's just a really simple example of how this happens. And it's felt in the body very subtly. You might say in the subtle body, not in the gross body necessarily, though sometimes you'll feel it in the gross body. You know, when, say, I start getting angry about something or defensive, which is my most typical form of anger, is self-defense. It's like my energy kind of comes up into the chest and the head and maybe the jaw. There's this kind of tightening that happens, tightening in the upper body and the shoulders. And there's a feeling of having lost something in that. It doesn't actually feel good. In a moment where where I might notice, oh, I'm getting defensive. I don't have to be. There's a kind of a stepping back and stepping back into alignment with what's happening. It's like, I don't have to do this. And it actually feels better. It actually feels like it has more integrity not to be going into defensiveness. It's sort of like when you start to defend yourself, you've already lost, you know? You already feel accused. You already feel like there's already shame in there somewhere inside of the system, and you just kind of like start to try to defend yourself as if you could get it out of you that way, but you actually can't. You can't get whatever that comment touched out of you by getting angry. Have you ever noticed you walk away angry and it's still like circulating inside of you, and it's suffering. It's suffering. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it shouldn't be there. All those sorts of things that we go to in our head. Simply just noticing the feeling tone of, say, awakening in the middle of that defensiveness to the possibility, I don't have to do that. I don't have to defend myself right now. And maybe you can just say a little something like, I'm sorry, I got defensive. I stopped listening to you. Let me try again. Feel how that feels. There's a sense of, some people call it self-possession. There's a sense of kind of coming back into yourself and into something that's core. And you'll notice my hand is kind of going to the chest. There's a kind of an element of it that is of the heart. There's also an element of it that's of the belly. This sense of integrity, where one might go out of it, might come back into it. There's a kind of a going more into the periphery of one's body in some way versus coming back in to the center. I want to talk a little more about the belly, which I think is such a powerful place to be. And for those of you who are new or relatively new to my teaching, I tend to talk about three kinds of intelligences that are operating in us. And we tend to operate from one of those, and our energy goes to that one that we operate on. And in this culture, at least, we operate a lot on the head intelligence, which is often about thinking and ideas and concepts. Shoulds definitely fall in the head category. Analyzing, anticipating, planning, discriminating, like taking something apart and seeing how it all fits together. It's a huge part of our days. It's a huge part of our employment often, is this kind of analytical, head-based kind of thinking. And it's hard from the head sometimes to get what I'm talking about embodying integrity, because some of the most important information about integrity comes from the heart intelligence and the belly intelligence. So I'm inviting you to begin to notice that as you're going through your week and as you're trying to discern wholesome and unwholesome, to bring in the heart and the belly. And the way to do that is to invite it, Let the heart intelligence come online. You can put your hand on your heart. It's a very simple one. And remember what the heart intelligence is. The heart intelligence recognizes value, the value of things. It's the origin of affection, of connection. And even just mentioning those words, gratitude, already begins to activate something here. Our analytical mind isn't about gratitude. You can maybe bring it in, analyze all the things you should be grateful for, and that can be helpful, but it's not fundamentally what that energy is about. Gratitude is something right here about it. Now, the belly is a different kind of energy. My sense of it is that the belly is that energy which really keeps us rooted in our body and this place and time. And there's some intelligence in the belly that knows where we are in space and time. It knows how to move in a way that is appropriate to us. Now, that may sound a little bit abstract, but have you ever had your belly kind of say no to something? Or say yes? People will often recognize that. There's something in the belly itself that can discern about whether doing something is appropriate for you or not. It's really common, in this culture at least, I don't know about other cultures because I haven't really lived them, but it's very common in this culture to have your belly intelligence shut down, not working. And some of the signs of this is if you, in any situation, you're kind of tuned into what everybody else wants of you, and you forget about what you need, then you probably have lost your belly intelligence. The belly intelligence also has a way of tuning into people around you. I think it's my theory of why people close it down is because as children, we can feel everybody around us through the belly. We know their feelings. We know a lot about them. Not cognitively, we couldn't put it into words, but we know kind of how the family system works. We know where we fit. We know if, all those things. And sometimes it's just too painful to take in that knowledge. And sometimes we abandon ourselves in that and we just become tuned to everybody else. So It's that belly intelligence that somehow is the way we negotiate ourselves and others on a kind of a level of need. Not the heart level where we talk about affection and so forth, but on a more basic level. The belly's really a powerful thing. You know, if you feel like you're not in touch with the belly, one exercise you can do is to like walk around from the belly, conscious of your belly. You know, most people walk around and they're in their head, planning the next thing they're going to do. They're hardly in their body at all. And if you're really thinking, you walk with your head forward. Have you ever noticed that? You know, the head forward kind of thing? You're thinking. So see what it would be like to move with your belly. See what that would be. See when somebody wants something from you, go to your belly and check in with the belly. What does the belly want? Maybe it wants to hesitate a little before you say yes. Maybe you want a little more of a conversation with the person, you know? Maybe the belly's saying, I can't do it. Sorry. Try it. There's an intelligence there. And, you know, one of the ways that we get drawn out of our integrity is through pleasing people or going along with the crowd. Everybody else wants to do this. I guess I better too. And in some way, when we do that, we dissociate from our body. We actually are not so much in our body. And I think particularly we lose the belly intelligence. You know, those individuals who are able to say no to their peers, you know, we associate this with teens, but actually I think that adults aren't also good at this either, you know. The ones who are able to do it, I think, are actually rooted in their belly. They're actually in touch with a belly intelligence. And sometimes people really struggle with guilt and shame, you know. Somebody else needs something of them and they feel guilty not to do that. Feeling guilt is not the same as the belly intelligence. How can I put this? Unfortunately, parenting is often an exercise in manipulation. From the get-go, we're saying good boy, good girl. And what does good boy and good girl really mean? It usually means you're doing what I want you to do, or you're not doing what I don't want you to do. Now, there's love in it. There's goodness in that, because you do want to, like, initiate your child into some sort of social consciousness, and they don't have a lot of it. They don't necessarily see what's going on around them very clearly. But before long, one begins to live for someone else's judgment of good and bad. And I don't think that's so helpful. You know, it often produces the people who then as adults have a hard time really discerning how to put their own needs legitimately first. What are the circumstances in which one is actually better off putting one's own needs first? Yes, that does exist. It does exist. And I have to say, spirituality has played its role in this manipulation of people out of their belly. So that goodness has been associated with people who have no needs, who act like angels, and so forth. And I do think there is legitimate sanctity. There are some people who really embody the divine, embody a divine consciousness. And perhaps in that they may appear to be, not so self-centered. But I've been around those people. Once in a while in my life, I run across somebody I feel is really a realized being. They are so in their bodies. They are so grounded. And when you speak to them, it's like the truth comes right out of the core of them. They're so grounded in the truth. And you can feel that. You can feel their grounding in the truth. And you get the sense that no one could convince them to budge from it. Well, that's not the rest of us, is it? The rest of us are so much influenced. So the invitation of this class is to find that in yourself. It's your birthright. It's not something lacking. You may find a lot of fear in your belly, which is what arises when someone is kind of manipulated out of their own belly intelligence. And you can't quite trust the people you're with. There's this kind of fear thing that happens in the belly. And so fear isn't necessarily the belly intelligence. That's also a discernment to make. Just because you're afraid of something doesn't mean that it's out of your integrity to do it by any means. It simply means there's fear present, and you can inquire about its origin and whether it's actually needed. So I think I'll close with just a review for many of you, or it will be the first time for some of you to do my hokey little thing about bringing down the energy from the head. So it works like this. If you put your palms not completely together, but about, let me get away from the microphone, about a ½ inch to an inch apart. Something like that. And if you move them a little like this, just kind of rotating, you'll notice something like a magnetic current that runs between your hands in the palms. Okay? Feel that. That's a powerful kind of energy point there in the palm. And you can bring that up and actually put it out to your ears. And feel that kind of going through your head. Kind of feels good to me, actually. And just lock into the sense of being in your head. The sense that who I am is kind of behind the eyes, where I think. Just kind of lock into that like you're on a computer. You're going to click and drag. So lock into that. And then slowly, you have to move kind of slowly, not to lose it. Bring that energy down and point the palms at your heart. And then wait. Feel the connection with the heart center. There's an actual feeling here. The heart center isn't right on the surface. It's a little below the surface. You can actually go right into the center of the chest. And just wait for the energy to come down. And continue to invite it to come down. It sort of feels like maple syrup poured over your head. There's a sense of kind of something relaxing, something draining down. Now, you probably have to stay doing this for a while to get the full effect, but I'm doing the quick version here. So now bring the palms further down and point them at the belly, which is a spot just below the navel. And then beneath that in the core of the belly. And just continue to invite that energy to come down. See what you notice. You are welcome to meditate like this. If it helps you to kind of bring the energy out of your head. You can also split the hands and have one at the heart and one at the belly. That works too. Find your way with it. You can also touch yourself. I find it energetically not quite as powerful, but it really feels good. There's like a sense of self-love in it when you touch your heart and you touch your belly. It's like, I'm here. I'm touching myself. I'm here. There's a great deal of comfort there. So this week, use this kind of exercise. See if you can bring the energy down to the belly. Practice walking from the belly. And see if you notice, particularly in a moment when somebody wants something of you, what the belly says. The belly intelligence isn't all about my own needs. It's not all about someone else's needs. It's a kind of intelligence about what's appropriate for this being right now. All right.